Elliot Moose is on the loose. Elliot Moose is on the loose. Elliot Moose is on the loose. Elliot Moose is on the loose.
I'm Elliot Moose, I like to play, and with my friends I play all day. My best friend Socks has a costume box, so we dress up and then we pretend to be astronauts in space, or detectives solving a case. Pirates, knights, explorers too, then you come home again.
Elliot Moose is on the loose. Elliot Moose is on the loose.
Have you seen Elliot?
Elliot Moose is on the loose. Elliot Moose is on the loose.
Elliot Moose.
All right, Lucas, I gotta ask you. I gotta ask you straight up. Did you ever call him Idiot Moose?
No, I never
No?
called him Idiot Moose.
Okay.
Now, I allow me to play detective here, Will. And I'm
Okay.
gonna, we're in Blade Runner right now. I'm asking, have you ever used that same machine on yourself? Because by the leading nature of your question, the powers of deduction lead me to believe that maybe you are the one who have called him Idiot Moose in the past. Is this true?
Yeah. Oh dear. This really backfired on me, didn't it? Yes. I mean, it's
Defense rests.
one of my many. All you need's the wolfskin cap and your Detective Elliot Moose over here. Yeah, I must admit that one of the many eccentricities of my brain is that I'll often repeat things a lot, either in my head or just out loud. So, if you hear the theme song to Elliot Moose enough, and then eventually you realize that, well, Elliot, kind of has the same amount of syllables. It kind of rhymes with idiot. Well, you could say Idiot Moose.
And leading to the credence to that theory, I wouldn't call Elliot Moose. No, I do believe he is supposed to be of what they call grade school age. I think he's somewhere between 5 and 8.
Yeah.
But that being said, all things considered, I would think the majority of 5 and 8-year-olds are less intelligent than me. I think if we went toe-to-toe in a game of wits, I'd be able to outsmart a 5-year-old. So by adult standards, I might call Elliot Moose something of an idiot.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's nothing personal against Elliot Moose. It was just a semantic kind of, oh, this sounds like this, I can just say this. So yeah, that was more me than you. Point taken. Welcome to For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. Wonderful Elwood City Limits patron. I'm Will Young and joined by Lucas Mancini. This is part 2 of a 6-part series where we are exploring the PBS Kids Bookworm Bunch, which is a weekend block of programming that PBS Kids did in the early 2000s. All of the properties are based on children's books, and they were during weekend mornings. And in fact, so first of all, if you are looking for more general information on the block, I would encourage you to go back to our first episode, which is the Timothy Goes to School episode from 2 weeks ago. It is part 1 of 6. That's where we get into the more long-form history of the Bookworm Bunch itself. I will say one thing that did crop up after that episode came out, and this is from our Discord, Pretty Cool Stairs, a.k.a. Peebs, had this extra bit of information that I will add on to what we've already said about the Bookworm Bunch. So the first season, which is mainly what we're talking about, there were 2 seasons of it. The first season of shows began at 15 and 45 minutes after the hour to discourage channel flipping to CBS, because at the same time, CBS had the Nick Jr. on CBS Saturday morning block and was the Bookworm Bunch's main competition in the preschool category. So,
Wait a minute. You're telling me that the Bookworm Bunch is the children's TV equivalent of the Monday Night Wars? The CBS was the WCW to PBS's Monday Night Raw?
The CBS, the Saturday morning struggle, it seems, between CBS and PBS. You could look at it that way, yeah.
Well, now I'm curious what would have been on Nick Jr. at the time. What was competing with Elliot Moose?
So I'm looking up. This is actually. I'm glad that Peebs told me about this. So I'm looking up the type of programming that would be on. This is Nick Jr. on CBS, because Nickelodeon on CBS was also a popular. As well. So let's see. They have it's thankfully thanks to Wikipedia on the Nickelodeon on CBS page. They have it separated into Nicktoons, live action, and preschool. So let's go with the preschool. So for a reminder, the PBS Kids Bookworm Bunch is Timothy Goes to School, the show we're talking about today, Elliot Moose, Corduroy, Seven Little Monsters, George Shrinks, and Marvin the Tap Dancing Horse. This is to counter-program 6 other shows on the CBS Nick Jr. block, which would be Blue's Clues.
Ooh, okay. Already PBS is in trouble. Already I'm flipping. If I see Timothy Goes to School is a head-to-head with Blue's Clues, woo! All right, next.
Dora the Explorer.
Oh, man. It's looking rough out here for people. All right, continue.
Little Bill. Do you remember Little Bill?
Little Bill. See, I'm thinking of like the SNL sketch, which I know
that's Mr. Bill.
That's Mr. Bill. No, I'm not familiar with Little Bill.
Little Bill was a cartoon that was produced by Bill Cosby.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well then, what is the next show, Will?
It's called Oswald. I'm not familiar with it.
Oh, I think I've heard of Oswald. I can't picture it in my mind's eye, but I've heard the name before.
Oh, Oswald is the blue octopus guy. Okay. Yeah. The Backyardigans, very popular. Like Blue's Clues and the Backyardigans, still relevant.
Yeah, the Backyardigans has a recent resurgence. People have been talking about it on TikTok all week. There's like a bunch of songs from the Backyardigans that have gone viral recently.
Castaways.
Yeah, exactly.
We are castaways. Ahoy there. Yeah. And Go Diego Go.
Interesting. Well, it's definitely a front-loaded lineup. I would say that PBS isn't without its hitters. And I don't want to say too much about kind of what I think of each show because I don't want to give away the rest of this series. But I will say, if it was between Elliot Moose and Blue's Clues, you best believe I'm switching that channel.
It's tough, and PBS I think did its very best, and the kind of ages range in those shows, and of course, what CBS also had in its back pocket is the Nicktoons, which are kind of almost have a bit of an ageless quality to them. You know, your Hey Arnolds, your Rugrats, your Wild Thornberries, what have you. SpongeBob not part of this. I'm actually just reading off of the of the list here. So, and all those other types of like I'm seeing other preschool content that they had around the same time as the Bookworm Bunch would have been stuff like Franklin, Little Bear, Bob the Builder, Lazy Town. So this is they're coming at them hot.
It's the Monday night or whatever night of the week this would have been. I guess nightly. The wars, the children's television wars.
The Saturday morning struggle. What this is it's so you have PBS.
The Saturday morning struggle. Yes.
You have PBS, which is the WWF, who are they have their solid lineup at around the mid 90s, but they've had to cut back on pyro a little bit, and they've had to have ham sandwiches at catering because they're not doing so good. And then you look over on the other side, Nick Jr. on CBS, and they've gotten all the heavy hitters. You have your Blue's Clues, which is like Hollywood Hogan. You have what was the other one? You have Franklin, which is like Scott Hall. You have Dora the Explorer, which is like Kevin Nash, and with all these inflated egos and inflated checks being pushed their way, they're throwing more money down as CBS, but are they really getting it back in quality? Only the viewer can tell you that.
Yeah, what is Oswald? Is Oswald Mongo? What?
Sure. Let's say Oswald is Steve Mongo McMichael. So that's what's kind of going around at the same time, and I appreciate Peebs kind of bringing that up. But for more of the information on what the Bookworm Bunch is and was, check out episode 1 of 6 if you haven't already. Today, we are leaping into another show in the block, and it is Elliot Moose. Now, as with all of the other shows, it's based on a series of books children's books by Andrea Beck is the author and illustrator's name. Beck is a Montreal-born author who lives now in Ontario. She also published the Pierre Lepouf trilogy and a fairly popular book, I'm to understand, called Goodnight Canada.
Good. I have not heard of Pierre Lepouf, nor have I heard of Goodnight Canada.
Okay.
But it's interesting to see how, something I've really learned from this show that continues is the deeply Canadian connection in all these children's TV shows.
Well, yes, and they all of them produced by Canadian animation giant Nelvana, so it stands to reason. This Elliot Moose, I feel, as we go along, we'll see even more of the Canadian roots. Are you familiar with the books of Elliot Moose?
No, not at all. This is one of the ones
Yeah.
where I didn't even realize it was a book prior to being a TV show. I just remembered the TV show.
Yeah, me neither. So I did a little Googling around just to kind of get a look of what they kind of look like. So the covers, if you Google search the covers, it kind of reminds me of the Franklin books. The illustration style is very similar. Even the way that the book covers are framed with the title and the illustration kind of looks like the Franklin books to me, which is something I read a lot as a kid.
Yeah, the Franklin books, far more familiar. I don't know if Elliot Moose was kind of trying to stay in the same lane. In last episode of For the Kids, we were talking about how Timothy Goes to School has a very similar vibe to a show like Franklin.
Yes.
As well as Arthur, a show me and you know very well. Elliot Moose seems to be a little bit, I don't know how different the books are than the show, but the show at least seems to be a totally kind of different sort of subject matter. Aimed at a younger audience than, say, a Franklin.
Yeah, quite a few years younger, I'd say. So the Elliot Moose series was developed by two Canadians, Jed MacKay and producer Marianne Colbert. So Jed MacKay was a writer for a children's show, which would probably be familiar to somebody my sister's age. My sister was born in 1983. She's elder millennial, but for elder millennials and members of Canada's Gen X, he wrote for the children's show Polka Dot Door. He also works as a producer, writer, and composer in a lot of Canadian children's media. He wrote the theme song for Elliot Moose, and he wrote theme songs for a lot of shows, including, Lucas, Telefrancais. Does that ring a bell?
No, I'm not familiar with Telefrancais either, no.
Telefrancais. Bonjour, salut. Bonjour, salut. It's kind of one of those things that you might have watched in a French class in elementary school. There was like the talking pineapple that was also a puppet.
Oh my God, I'm looking at pictures from this. I have not seen this before, but it looks amazing.
There was a great video that used to be on YouTube, and it was like Telefrancais clips to a Korn song, and it was very funny. I don't think it's there anymore, I wish. Jed MacKay also worked as coordinating director for Just for Laughs, the Just for Ears, for a couple of years. Just for Laughs is a Canadian brand of comedy. It's like a comedy. It used to be a show all about just stand-up comics in Canada, but now I think probably Just for Laughs Gags has probably outlived it, if that's still on TV.
God. Just for Laughs Gags.
That's when was so I think I might have mentioned before somewhere that like when CBC, which is our kind of national television provider, one of the ways that I was able to watch a lot of, venerated comedy shows like The Simpsons, Arrested Development, and even Frasier was that like after school they would have like The Simpsons on at 5, Arrested Development on at 5:30, and then Just for Laughs Gags, which is basically a prank show, would be on at 6, and then that was the time to turn the TV off.
Yeah.
The news is on, Just for Laughs Gags is on, nothing's on. It's just, I hate Just for Laughs Gags so
Just
much.
for Laughs Gags, and it's like some of that stuff you go back and watch it, and it really, really doesn't hold up. It's like, yeah, what if there was these two cops in Montreal and they started kissing? Whoa!
Yeah, just really lowbrow, crappy.
And like there was no
prank show
audio.
stuff.
They would never. The production quality of that show was really horrible. So like they wouldn't capture audio when they were filming the gags. So they would use like Foley sound effects that were like extra terrible. Yeah, no good.
Just
I'd rather
really
watch Elliot Moose.
Yeah, just really low budget, not funny, quote unquote humor is universal type of thing. That's probably why they didn't have any live audio. Anyway, terrible show. But Just for Laughs, it was a great way to discover Canadian stand-up comedians for a long time. And a lot of, I wonder, I mean, it might have changed because of COVID, but I wonder if the Just for Laughs banner is still being used to promote events, or as it's known in Quebec, Juste pour rire, which was a great line on Letterkenny. I was just watching the Just for Rires. The other person who developed the show, as I mentioned, is producer Marianne Culbert, who is a producer on a litany of Canadian-made cartoon shows. Her IMDb is considerable, so I'll just name you a couple. So she's been producer on Jim Henson's Dog City, George and Martha, Little Bear, Braceface, Cyber Chase, Clone High, Maggie and the Ferocious Beast, and has had several credits on Thomas and Friends in the last few years. So she's been through a lot of stuff. She knows what she's doing.
Something in there for everyone, yeah.
Absolutely. So Elliot Moose, the TV show, is a combination live action and cartoon show, as we'll talk about in a little bit. It premiered September 30th, 1998, and ran until December 4th, 2000. So with the little I've seen of Elliot Moose, the show, I didn't see on PBS. I saw on its other airing spot, YTV.
Same.
Exactly. And there's a big difference between the PBS and the YTV airings that we will get into. But now I just want to mention, speaking of Canada, here's where Canada's going to play a big role. It's in the voice cast of the show. Now, there were also physical actors who were behind the costumes, the live-action costumes of the Elliot Moose crew, but they also had voice actors. So, for example, Al Mukadam plays Elliot, who had a role on Degrassi, The Next Generation, a very Canadian show. That's where Aubrey Graham got his start.
Yes,
he was also
Jimmy.
He was also the voice of Johnny Abadi on Angela Anaconda. If you watch that show, I did, regrettably, as many people might have
I've been compared to Johnny Abadi.
You have? In what way?
Someone told me that my personality and whole vibe was a mix of Johnny Abadi and the nerdy guy together.
The nerdy guy? What? That's it. Ooh. Was that your enemy? Did your enemy say that to
this
you?
was a close friend.
Okay. Well, geez, I don't know how I'd feel with that sort of thing. Does Radio Free Roscoe ring a bell to you at all?
Oh, absolutely. Were you not a big Radio Free Roscoe head back in the day? Maybe that's a little bit after your time.
It's a little bit
my era.
It's a little bit after my time.
Yeah.
So it was also a Family Channel thing, and I did not have the Family Channel.
Yeah, Radio Free Roscoe was a big... my roommate's more of a Radio Free Roscoe expert than I am.
Oh, my goodness.
This is something that he has brought up as recently as this week.
Really?
Yeah, I know. He loves that show. But yeah, it was a cool show at the time. There's a lot of, there's like neutral Milk Hotel references and stuff like that in the first episode, which is pretty above the level of the kind of music discussion that'd be happening in its contemporaries. So yeah, interesting show at the time.
So I would have been more familiar with Al Mukadam from his appearance on Degrassi: The Next Generation, which my wife and I watched a couple of episodes from it recently. It's really bad. And I loved it back in the day. It's made for teenagers, like really young teenagers. So you can only be so mad at it, but boy, it's not good. So further on the cast, we have Keith Knight as Beaverton. Keith Knight, a venerable Canadian actor and voice actor. You may recognize him from the movie The Care Bears Adventures in Wonderland. He was also the voice of Lowly Worm on The Busy World of Richard Scarry, which I clocked it right away. I was like, that's who it is.
I see now, looking at his IMDb, he was also in My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah, the original. That was filmed in
Glace Bay in Sydney, Nova Scotia.
Glace Bay,
Cape Breton, yeah.
Unfortunately, Keith Knight passed away in 2007, so he may sound familiar, and this is another Magic School Bus connection. We had the voice of Wanda in Timothy Goes to School. Now we have the voice of Arnold, although this is after his voice dropped, so he sounds a little bit different from the earlier Magic School Bus episode. He also played Owl on Little Bear, who I also was just like, I watched quite a bit of Little Bear when I was a kid. It's funny, I would have guessed, looking at all of the Nicktoons on Nick Jr., I would have guessed that Little Bear was a PBS program, but I don't believe it was.
Yeah.
That was like YTV and Nickelodeon, I guess.
Or on Treehouse or something. I feel like that's where I watched Little Bear. Was on Treehouse.
Yes, exactly. We have Ruby Smith Maravitz as Socks. Speaking of Angela Anaconda, Socks is voiced by Nanette Man War. Oh, God, it makes my skin crawl. I also have, like, residual hatred for it because it's, like, in, like, right before the Digimon movie.
I was just going to say, like, what was the last time you watched Angela Anaconda besides the part where she goes to see the Digimon movie before the Digimon movie?
We also have Franny Diggins as Paisley, who shows up a few times, and only playing a very small role, but I wanted to shout her out here. Julie Lemieux plays the role of Amy. I think we only hear Amy in the first like cartoon bit, but Julie Lemieux has quite a few important credits. She was the voice of Rupert on the cartoon of Rupert. She was the voice of Icky on Metabots. She's various voices on Arthur. And again, talking about cartoons I hate, she was the lead character Warren on Monster by Mistake.
Oh, wow. That's another one for our American listeners are probably not familiar with, but if you're not, please go look up Monster by Mistake. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, it's true. CGI did used to look like shit. Anyway, I never really liked Monster by Mistake. It's one of my least favorite Canadian cartoons, but Julie Lemieux, very talented voice actor. I'm only scratching the surface of things she's been in. Chances are, like, she's the voice of Rupert. I loved the Rupert cartoon. I watched it a ton. And loved Metabots, too. All right, so let's get into this episode of Elliot Moose. Again, we are kind of using the same video file. We'll put it in the Patreon description, and it's a long, like, 3-hour block of programming that we found on YouTube. So we watched the episode that was in the same block as Timothy Goes to School. So it just so happens to be... Oh, I lost my place. Oh, there it is. Season 1, Episode 4. It originally aired on October 20th, 1998. We had a few dialogue-less interstitials here. We had one that was like a flea circus. There was one that was called What Do You Think About? There was a small letter E coming home on a school bus to a capital E, and then there was like a choo-choo train, all of these kind of like... non-voiced but like imaginative interstitials. The theme song, which we kind of hinted at last time,
it really starts to lose its meaning the more you do it. Elliot, 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 Elliot. Like it sounds like some sort of like throat chant after a while. Like I'm not even making the word Elliot. I'm just, Elliot, 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 Elliot.
It's like the noise that Abe makes when he possesses someone in Abe's Odyssey. So I'm gonna attribute the theme song to Jed McKay and Bruce Leigh, who are the composers for the series. I don't know who sang this. They used a different version that I'm used to for the Bookworm Bunch. So with this one, when you see it on the video, they get right into the lyrics, which I'm kind of using. You know, it starts with Elliot Moose is on the loose. Elliot, and then it goes like that. They cut out the Elliot, 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 which is the thing that you remember from Elliot Moose.
It's true. It might be the only thing that I remember from Elliot Moose is the Elliot, 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 Elliot. You know, when I was gearing up, because I know we always talk about the theme song. You know, I had to discard all my bits about like getting activated like some sort of Soviet sleeper agent or something from the Elliot Moose like trance like theme song, but instead we just kind of have the regular it's Elliot Moose, he's on the loose, which is still quite catchy.
It is, and it also gets the show across very easily. There's no digging that you have to do. As the lyrics say, I'm Elliot Moose, I like to play, and with my friends I'll play all day. My best friend Socks has a costume box, so we dress up, and then we pretend to be astronauts in space or detectives solving a case. Pirates Nights, Explorers 2, then we go home again. And that's what you can expect from the show. They are not lying to you. But I didn't really say. I never watched this show because, again, it was very below my kind of watching level at that point. You know, I would have been, when this debuted, I would have been like 8 or 9, so I would have been into like Reboot and Beast Wars and Shadow Raiders and all this kind of stuff. But this is definitely another one. Like Timothy Goes to School, it was like, I'm sick home for the day, and I'm leaving on YTV at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then Elliot Moose comes on, and I just kind of fall asleep in the middle of a fever to Elliot, 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 and that's why it's still in my brain.
That rocks you off to sleep. No, at this point, when the Elliot Moose theme song came on, that's my signal to be like, okay, time to get into the real daytime TV and turn on like Maury or something, or Judge Judy.
Right. It would have been at the exact same time. So how Elliot Moose works is that each episode has a set number of live-action segments and animated segments that use the same characters. So we have 3 animated segments in this one and 2 live-action. We start with our first animation, which is called Fistful of Crayons, which already I was like, go on, Elliot Moose, go on. And it's all about Elliot Moose playing a cowboy. He's the Rainbow Kid. And this is being told by Beaverton, who's playing like an old like mayor or man about town in the Old West. So the Rainbow Kid rides into Rainbow Gulch, which has absolutely no color. It's all in sepia tone. And
yes, they keep saying, and this is a phrase I'd never heard before. I wonder if this is some sort of like known phrase or something, but I'd never heard this term where it's like the town. It's a brown and white kind of town. There ain't no color.
Yeah, no, that didn't register with me either. So if it's a saying, it's certainly a little bit beyond me. And the Rainbow Kid kind of comes into the local bar where they're making like juice instead of whiskey or something. And he's looking.
Yeah, they're making smoothies, which I had one. Art imitates life. That's what I had for lunch today.
What type of smoothie did you have?
Oh, some sort of green kale mess. I got here. You'll get a kick out of this story. Quick aside.
Sure.
I got Five Guys last night, and
I got Five Guys last night too.
Oh, look at us, twinsies!
What's your Five Guys order?
Oh, just like the bacon burger with fries, with Cajun fry. I can't do a Cajun accent. But,
so I'm sorry to put an aside in your aside, but I got the wrong order delivered to me last night. So we got our actual order for free, plus this other order that I didn't want. So I ate 2 burgers and a grilled cheese sandwich last night. I'm going to have Cajun fries with dinner tonight.
Oh, my goodness. Well, so my Five Guys story, that's a very happy story. Mine has a very sad ending, which is that today I'm really paying for it. It's just like my guts feel like I'm rotting inside out. And so in order to alleviate sort of the punishment from getting Five Guys, I decided to basically flush it all out. I've just been drinking a smoothie today, this big old green kale thing. But I was like Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen watching this episode. I was like, they're like me.
It's, I mean, you're more sleight of frame than me, so I never take into account what a greasy boiger and fries will do to a man of more slender frame. Because for me, I packed in 2 of those burgers and a grilled cheese sandwich, and I'm like, yeah, I could eat those fries, but I'm not going to. So it's all in a day's work for me, baby. So that's interesting that you both had smoothies on the same day. We're kind of hitting some real synchronous beats here. Rainbow Kid kind of goes up on people and is looking to, like, he goes, draw. And Lionel's like, excuse me? And he's like, I want to draw. Like, he wants to draw them.
This legitimately made me laugh. Like, Elliot Moose is really kind of intended for an incredibly young audience.
Yes.
But this opening segment, this like Old West parody, I think was the most watchable of any part of the show. Like him threatening to draw pictures for people is just such a funny, like, silly concept.
I just got your Telefrancais photo on our Skype chat. That's funny.
Oh, perfect.
So the animation style, I found it to be very pleasing to the eye. It's very rounded and colorful, especially in this segment, which is all about making colors and painting things. It's very kid-friendly. It's all very soft, and it looks like they look like stuffed animals come to life.
That's really intentional, is that unlike something like Arthur or Timothy Goes to School, everybody's drawn as if they are a stuffed animal, complete with like the way you could kind of see the seams on some of them. For instance, across Elliot Moose's nose, and some of the other characters across the lion's chest.
And very rounded at the edges. There's nothing really too like sharp or anything like that. Anyway,
Elliot's got these big old feet.
Yes, he does. Yes, so I liked it. It was very pleasing to look at. So eventually, the Rainbow Kid paints the whole town and makes it a very nice color, and he gets appointed the sheriff, at which point he becomes Sheriff Crayon. So, bit of a name change.
I wrote down, it's the Beaver recounting all this, and he's like, and then we made him sheriff. And I'm like, not much of a vetting process, huh?
No, but there's only like 4 people in the town that we see, so I guess they just got together and figured it out. So the new Sheriff Crayon runs into Annie Soxley, who is quick on the draw with a marker and goes around marking up everything. This kind of reminded...
She's out here tagging.
Yeah.
I was saying, she's tagging left and right. She's got one of those giant, like, felt pen markers, those ones that people, like, tag the subway with, and she's just going around leaving her mark.
This whole thing of, like, making creations on the side of houses and using paint, it reminded me of a video game I played this year, Concrete Genie, which involves a lot of painting places and making, like, creations out of paint. Reminded me of Epic Mickey a little bit, too. So the Annie and the sheriff challenges Annie to a draw, which kind of has the trappings of a typical duel at sundown of cowboys, but it's actually just them, like, getting into a drawing competition, and they tie. So in the end, Sheriff Crayon deputizes her, and they become the best of friends. And that's kind of how they work everything out. There's really like you'll be lucky if you find any kind of stakes in these sorts of things. As Lucas said, this is for really little kids. So at the end, they become friends, they work together, and they kind of make beautiful art with their paint and with markers. We get into our first live action segment here, which is called Ride Share. And again, this is people in the
Elliot
character
Moose
costumes.
and his friends, they invent Uber. They developed the Lyft platform.
It's funny. Ride share has a whole different meaning now that you mention it, instead of just sharing a ride somewhere as it would have been in 1998. So Elliot and Socks are pretending to be a car and a plane, and like I was saying, these are human performers in the costumes of the characters. So they're moving around like a set, which is like a big house with a large interior and then like a little bit of a backyard. So they're in the backyard. They have like boxes with shoulder straps made up to look like Elliot's a car and Socks is a plane. And they're trying to play together, but their concepts aren't really fitting because Socks is trying to land the plane, but Elliot's on a road. It's like, you can't land the plane here. So eventually, Elliot, he originally thought everybody was going to play cars, but then he decides it's okay if people play a different game as long as they have fun, because Beaverton and Paisley decide to join in. But Beaverton wants to be a boat, and Paisley wants to be a train. And as much as that's true of, letting people have their own fun, and it's okay as long as nobody bugs each other, everybody gets in each other's way, which isn't very much fun. They kind of want to do different things, but it's like, oh, the train's in the boat's way, but how can that be? The plane is in the train's way, or whatever.
I'm not going to lie, I was mind-numbingly bored during this segment, so I occupied my time by thinking about Diddy Kong Racing.
Oh,
I was like,
yeah.
Wow, everybody's in different vehicles, and they're kind of, all taking up the same space in planes and cars and boats, and it's kind of like the greatest kart racer of all time, Diddy Kong Racing.
And they even added in trains, which is like the coolest of the 4, in my opinion. So they managed to do something that even Diddy Kong Racing wasn't able to do, as good as it is. You're right. There's not a lot to grasp onto here. I will say that the costumes are very nice looking. The performers are able to be very expressive in their movements, because it's the performers like performing very broadly, and then the voice actors kind of performing over top of their actions. And the costumes look very close to what they look like in animation. So good work by the prop and costuming department there.
Yeah, speaking of props, the one thing I'll say I definitely like the animated segments of this show far more than I like the live action segments.
Yeah.
And I think this actually kind of plays into something me and you have talked about before when we were little kids, where we were just kind of adverse to anything live action and we preferred the animated segments.
Right.
And I think I remember feeling that about this exact show, where when it became time for like the IRL Elliot Moose, I was like, oh God, better switch over to CBS, I guess. But one thing I did like and notice about this rewatching it is and we saw a little bit of this in Big Comfy Couch, the way the props play with perspective.
Yes.
Elliot Moose and all of his friends seem particularly small up against these backgrounds. Like the sets have all been designed to look a little bit too big to give the basically the illusion that either they're kids or they're kind of stuffed animals come to life.
That's right. That's a really good point. Eventually, they are able to kind of mend their differences by Elliot creating a car, plane, boat-a-train, which is
They're like Voltron.
Yeah, or like a Diddy Kong Racing car. It's although except you had to commit to one of them, didn't you? You couldn't switch on the fly. So yeah, no,
if we was Voltron, Elliot Moose be the head.
I like your Voltron comparison better. They're also different colors, so I think that probably works a little better. So they all kind of link together in a square, and they all take turns being their own vehicle, which is how they kind of compromise. And this segment ends with the last one they do is the train, which is Paisley is the train, and we kind of go off on Elliot saying, "All aboard the Friends train." Here comes the friendship sailing your way. That's anyway. Our second animated segment is the Sock's Nest Monster. We get a nice little Scottish version of the Elliot Moose theme to start this off, because we're in not rural, rural Scotland at a laboratory, and we get like a bagpipe version of the Elliot Moose theme. I actually really liked that. So it's Elliot and Professor McPaisley. Unfortunately, Paisley doesn't put on a Scottish accent. They're trying to spot the Loch Ness Monster in a nearby lake, and they think that they spot them, but it actually turns out to be Socks and Beaverton on a boat. And this is all... we have at least a little bit more stakes in the animated segment, because Elliot's job is on the line here. Professor McPaisley lays it out to him in no uncertain terms. If Elliot can't take a picture of the monster, he's fired. Like, he's out of a job.
Yeah, this is really... Like, you talk about these episodes have relatively low stakes. This episode has very real stakes.
Relatable, too.
Among us, yeah, exactly. Whoops among us has not been faced with a task where if we did not complete it, not only would we be fired, Elliot would be out on the street, apparently, because
he'd be in a whole different...
talks about how
he'd be in a whole different country.
Exactly.
He'd be in a whole different country with no penny to his name. He'd just be on the streets of Scotland. Just Elliot Moose doesn't know the language, doesn't know the culture. He'd be sunk.
Doesn't know the language. Wait a minute.
Well, he doesn't. The accent. It can. Elliot hasn't. Let's just say that nobody's talking the Scottish accent here. Elliot hasn't adopted the local culture as his own. He's just a transplant.
Listen, I sympathize. Being in a strange country, on the street with no job, especially if you're a talking stuffed moose, would be challenging. I like to believe that Elliot Moose would be able to communicate with the Scottish people. I think I believe in him enough that he'd be able to get used to the accent and its eccentricities.
Yeah. Maybe, but still, you don't want to take that risk. There's a lot on the line here. Is what we're trying to say. So
you're saying, Elliot Moose might accidentally be like, "Oh, I love Margaret Thatcher," and all the Scottish people will kick him out of town.
Oh, I love being here in the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the Celts sounds like a terrible football team.
Haggis, ew. So Elliot needs to take a picture of the Loch Ness Monster. Socks and Beaverton initially try to help him by essentially using their boat to create a fake Loch Ness Monster, but Professor McPaisley's intelligent computer, this amazing lab equipment, sees right through it and identifies it as a fake. So Elliot's got basically one more chance. And finally, Elliot does see the real Loch Ness Monster and manages to grab a picture. The Loch Ness Monster, in this interpretation, is something of a green dragon. Almost looks like a feminized version of Pete's dragon a little bit. Elliot Moose doesn't lose his job. He meets the Loch Ness Monster. And
Yay!
yeah, cool beans. The next live action segment is called Another Way to Play, where Elliot and Socks are playing Follow the Leader. And man, there's even less in this than in the last live action segment. It's them playing Follow the Leader, which I'm, in fairness, I haven't played Follow the Leader since I was a very young boy. So I kind of had to get myself caught up to it, although it's pretty self-explanatory. My note here was, boy, it must have gotten hot in those suits, because Elliot and Socks are having to do these complicated jumping routines and leaping routines, and I'm just thinking about the lights of the set, which are already hot as it is, and if they're filming this in the summer or the springtime in Ontario or Quebec or wherever it is, man, they must have been roasting in those things.
And or if it's indoors, they're under studio lights. Like,
yeah,
I'm starting to get I wonder. Here's my Elliot Moose
fan theory,
conspiracy theory.
Okay.
Yeah, let's crack this open. What if these live action parts are intentionally boring because they want the little kids to like run around and get all their energy out in between the animated segments? Because almost all of the live action parts are kind of about running around.
Yeah.
It's like a big comfy couch kind of thing, where a big part of that show was like, we want kids to get up off the couch and get active along with this. And I wonder, because, the animated segments aren't boring in the same way. Like, going back and talking about them, we have I found the Old West one kind of funny and clever, and Elliot's fighting for his job. But when we get to these live action, it seems like the intended age drops from like, 7, 8 to like Teletubbies age, like 5, 4.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, these live action segments are intentionally boring so that the kids won't watch them and instead they'll run around. Of course, if that was true, that wouldn't be that great of a plan, because what kids would actually do is switch over to watch Blue's Clues.
That's true. I think that you do have something there, especially considering that the big comfy couch at the time, as we spoke of in our episode on the show, was, it was not necessarily in a lot of children's media to like encourage them into physical activity. So I imagine that's something that probably caught on, especially from one Canadian production to the other. So that's a good theory. I think I would actually prescribe to that. But you're right. And I think the other thing is that in animation, you can be so much more imaginative versus on a more restricted set, which even though the characters are, talking animals, it's still like there's only so much that you can do with those. So you're right in that it kind of goes back and forth between two somewhat separated age ranges between those two. So that's a good observation. I'm glad you brought that up. Basically, Paisley tries to join in with Follow the Leader, but isn't very good, and he gets discouraged. Elliot and Socks come up with an idea to let Paisley take the lead, and it's pretty. That's basically the end of the story. But I will say that there was at least a nice little line here, very inclusive line here from Elliot of what's easy for us isn't easy for you, and so that's obviously the idea behind it, and to kind of. I appreciated the message of accommodation and accessibility, especially today. So that's nice, but yeah, there's not a lot here. The last part of the episode is another animated segment called The Squeakly Ghost, in which Farmer Beaverton thinks that he sees a squeakly ghost, and that we get literally him saying a ghost. Which
that was the highlight of this episode for me, was a literal. It's not often that we get an unironic ghost.
Yeah, you really have to appreciate when that happens naturally, because it's all ironic these days. So Farmer Beaverton calls Detective Elliot Moose and Dr. Sockson, so a Sherlock Holmes and Watson thing. As I mentioned before, Elliot Moose even has the wolfskin cap. What a meta thing about this I found odd is that this short, at least on Wikipedia, is listed as being part of episode 22 of season 2. So this is later in the production order. So this is obviously, we talked about the air dates of Elliot Moose. This is airing with the Bookworm bunch, which was more in the early 2000s. So it seems that they kind of mixed up the production order a little bit, probably to meet the length requirements for what the block needed, I suppose. That's my guess, at least. Detective Elliot Moose and Dr. Soxon look for clues at Farmer Paisley's house, and they initially find nothing. Farmer Paisley is Farmer Beaverton's next-door neighbor. And unfortunately, we see right from the very beginning that it's not a ghost, it is just a sheet on a line, but we have to kind of follow the steps of storytelling here. And then eventually, we then find out that the squeaky ghost was Farmer Paisley's sheets on his squeaky laundry line. So, there's not a whole lot of nuance or detail within there to kind of elucidate. That's pretty much it. And that is the end of the episode. And of course, it ends off. This I found a little familiar, and I'm wondering if it's a case of I saw the end of a lot of Elliot Moose episodes, where Elliot says, "Remember, good friends cooperate with each other. See you next time." I'm pretty sure he says it at the end of every episode. The last thing I want to note here isn't actually part of Elliot Moose, so I took the time to mention the interstitials of the Bookworm bunch before this episode. As we did with Timothy Goes to School, there's like a short little music video after this episode of Elliot Moose. And the song, the tune's not really coming to me, but the main lyric is, "You gotta sing when your spirit says sing."
Right. And we get clips again from all the Bookworm bunch shows and a kind of a preview of what's to come.
Yeah, and I mean, the one we talked about last week was kind of like one of those obnoxious types of earworms, and I wasn't really that interested in it. This one was okay. I like the message of, like, if you got a song in your heart, then you should just go ahead and not be afraid to sing it. And there's, like, wiggle and shake. They just replace, wiggle and shake. And it's just encouraging kids to sing and dance. So nothing wrong with that. So let's take Elliot Moose in review here. Lucas, how did Elliot strike you this time?
It's funny because it's one of those cases where I enjoyed talking about it way more than I enjoyed watching the episode, because
right.
by the nature of it being kind of a variety show, there was lots to talk about, which reminded me of other variety shows we've watched on the show, my favorite of which being Between the Lines, a show I liked watching quite a bit going back. But this show, again... the live action parts were just too slow for me. They were just too boring. But I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised by the animated segments, which is the part of the show that I actually remembered a lot less as a kid. Like, as a kid, I remembered... I thought Elliot Moose, I think, was an all live action show when we were sitting down to watch it today. That's how long it's been since I've seen it. So I was pleasantly surprised by the animated sections, and I thought there was kind of lots to talk about in them, which was funny enough and kind of a surprise. But yeah, besides that, I thought I like the concept of, usually we're so used to 2 different stories, and it was fun to have like 5 different stories. Well, there's pretty big air quotes around stories there. But yeah, I like the variety. I just thought the live action bits were a tad too boring. Even if you were a little kid, I think as a kid, I thought those were boring as well. So that criticism still stands. What about yourself, Will?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those ones that it's just like, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It seems fine, like, in terms of kids. It's imaginative. It encourages imagination, especially, with the opening thing of, like, all of the cartoon segments are Elliot and his friends playing pretend. So always appreciate that. And I did appreciate what you said, too. It does seem to be encouraging a degree of physicality among kids, which is never a bad thing. I can remember a few times watching different shows as a kid and kind of getting up and moving around, and it's just hard. Sometimes it's hard to sit still as a kid, even if you've got a TV show on. Although every time I'm over and we turn on to my niece's house and we turn on the TV, she's just immediately transfixed. It seems, like I said, totally fine. I'm watching it as an adult, especially as you said, the live action segments, there is nothing going on. But it's also, there's nothing to dislike about it, really. And it's often pleasant to look at. It's a very colorful show. I appreciate the craft of the costumes and the animation, too. It's just very pleasant and inoffensive and fine. So, just kind of in the middle on this one. Nothing to really love, but certainly nothing to hate. And a few things to at least respect, if not like. So we're going to keep going through the Bookworm bunch, and there's a few more animated shows I'm really interested to talk about here. A couple that I personally have no experience with, but a few that I definitely do. So, Lucas, I think last time I had you pick, and this time I'm just going to do a random.org drawing of the 4 shows that we have left, and we're going to see which one we're going to talk about next time on For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. So let's go, random.org. Between 1 and 4, we're going to be talking about Corduroy. Corduroy it is.
Ooh.
Now, this one's going to be a little different. I think that Corduroy is shortened in some way. Like, it's a bit of a shorter show. So we might be jumping around that video file a little bit, but certainly quite a bit to talk about in terms of the history of Corduroy. And I'm going to see if I can get my hands on that book. Like, if I'm going to, make a call into my local library, I'm going to be like, yo, Elwood City Limits podcast here. I'm going to need your copy of Corduroy. Because I got some pull down there. I'm always repping the local library. So, it's been such a long time. I don't even really remember what Corduroy is about. So, how did they make that into a show? Anyway, so many questions. We're going to be watching Corduroy next time on For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast. If you have any memories of Elliot Moose in your household, or Corduroy for that matter, you can feel free to comment below this post or start up a conversation in Discord. Some great ones happening these days. Very happy for everyone on Patreon who is contributing to the discussion over there. And if that's not your style, that's cool too. We appreciate your support all the same. So the Bookworm bunch continues on next time. Lucas, man, I'm trying to think about it. I definitely had a Paddington bear doll, but why didn't I have a Corduroy? Corduroy's so cute.
I barely remember Corduroy. I think the Corduroy book is kind of sad, or I could be conflating multiple children's books in my mind eye. There's a lot of children's books about inanimate stuffed animals, but I feel like Corduroy is like kind of, I don't know. We'll have to get into it next week.
Of course.
Or next episode.
Yeah, don't mean to jump the gun. So Corduroy is coming up next time, Corduroy the animated series, but we will talk about the book as well, and hopefully, look, I'm going to go on my online library thing right now, and Corduroy's Christmas, Corduroy's Halloween, Corduroy, oh my god, okay,
oh my god, he's like Ernest.
Corduroy meets Vern, what is this? All right, so we'll talk about that all next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of For the Kids. For Lucas Mancini, my name is Will Young, and that was
Doink.